Hi everyone, today we gonna discuss how two forces of markets called supply and demand work. First, let's discuss what market actually is. A market is a group of buyers and sellers of a particular product. A competitive market is one with many buyers and sellers, each has a negligible effect on price. In a perfectly competitive market, all goods exactly the same, buyers and sellers so numerous that no one can affect market price. Each is a price taker.
So let's continue by talking about demand. So the demand curve, the relationship between price and quantity demanded. The quantity demanded of any good is the amount that buyers are willing and able to purchase. Many things determine the quantity demanded of a good, but one determinant plays a central role: its price. There is two main terms that we should learn. Quantity demanded, the amount of a good that buyers are willing and able to purchase, and the law of demand, the claim that other things being equal, the quantity demanded of a good falls when the price of the good rises. And other than that, the demand schedule is a table that shows quantity demanded at each price. Depending on that, we can create a demand curve in a graph. In this graph, we can see the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded. What shapes demand? Price isn't the only thing that affects how much people want to buy. Several other factors called determinants of demand can shift the entire demand curve. It is income, tastes and preferences, expectations, number of buyers, and related goods. So, the demand curve story. There are two important movements, like movement along the curve and the shift of the curve. Movement along the curve, when only the price changes, we move up or down the existing curve. So it's only dependent on the price. But if we talk about the shifting of the curve, it's when one of the determinants changes. Income, taste, the entire curve shifts left or right. When the curve shifts left, it means the demand decreased. Otherwise, when it shifts to the right, it means the demand is increased.
Effect. Rising prices make us all feel more poor. When prices rise, we cut back on what we buy if our income does not go up. When you buy less of something without increasing your purchase of other things, that is the income effect. So if the price of a slice of pizza goes from $2 to $3, you might buy only 3 slices instead of 4. We can illustrate this in a demand schedule, which is a table that lists the quantity of something that a person will buy at various prices in a market. Sticking with the pizza example, in the first column, we have the price of a slice of pizza from $1 all the way to 6. And in the second column, we have the quantity demanded, which might be 5 slices when they are only $1, and decreasing by 1 for every dollar increase in slices, in the limit of $6 per slice, where it is deemed by the consumer to be too expensive to purchase. Now, what if we plotted these numbers on a graph? The result would be a downward sloping demand graph, also commonly called a demand curve.
Next, let's talk about supply. Quantity supplied is the amount of a good that sellers are willing and able to sell. There is a low supply, and this is the claim that other things being equal, the quantity supplied of good rises when the price of the good rises. We have two models here. This is supply schedule, a table that shows the relationship, the price of a good and the quantity supplied, and supply curve, a graph of the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity supplied. These models help us to understand the complicated graph in a simple way. What affects supply? Just like demand, supply is influenced by factors beyond price. These determinants of supply can shift the entire supply curve, changing how much producers are willing to offer at every price point. First, input prices. If the cost of raw materials, labor, or energy rises, it becomes more expensive to produce goods. Supply decreases as profit margins shrink. In this case, supply curves move to the left. Second, technology. Biotechnology makes production cheaper and faster. Manufacturers automate. They can make supply more at a lower cost, shifting supply rightward. Expectations. If producers expect future prices to rise, they might hold back supply now to sell more later at higher price. Then, number of sellers. More business entering a market increases total supply. When one company sees profit, competitors often follow. Fifth, government policies. Taxes raise production costs, decreasing supply, while substitutes lower costs, increasing supply. Regulations can restrict to encourage production too. And now let me explain supply curve shifts. The supply curve slopes down as prices increase. Producers are willing to supply more. It's a mirror image of demand. Just like with demand, there are two types of changes: movement along the curve and shift off the curve. In the movement along the curve, price changes causes movement up or down the existing supply curve, while shift of the curve happens when there is a change in input cost, technology, or other determinants shift the entire curve left or right. Think of it in this way: price changes move you along the path, everything else moves the entire path itself.
Example. If the pizza shop is already making money selling lots of slices of pizza all day, the promise of higher revenues generated by each sale motivates the pizza shop to make more pizza. Assuming that the price of pizza were to be set by some outside figure, if the price of pizza rises, but the pizza shop's cost of making pizza stays the same, the pizza shop will earn a higher profit on each slice. The owner of the pizza shop understands that making more pizza makes sense in order to take advantage of the higher prices. Now, perhaps the demand is so high that the pizza shop can't even keep up with the necessary supply. Customers show up, and by noon, there is no more pizza. This may lead to a change in either the price or the supply. Similar to a demand schedule, a supply schedule shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied for a specific good or service, or how much of a good or service a supplier will offer at various prices. Like a demand schedule, a supply schedule lists supply for a very specific set of conditions. For example, let's list the price of the pizza in the first column, again from $1 to $6. Then in the second column, let's list the slices that will be supplied per day, starting with 100 and going up by 50 for each dollar increase in price. Again, we could plot these numbers on a graph, and the result would be an upward sloping supply graph, commonly called a supply curve. This is a graphical representation of a supply schedule.
And now, this is a part where the magic happens: market equilibrium. Equilibrium is the point where supply and demand intersect, where the quantity buyers want to purchase exactly equals the quantity sellers want to sell. It is the market's sweetest spot. There are some terms like equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, where buyers and sellers agree. Equilibrium price, the price at which supply equals demand. At this price, there is no shortage or surplus. The market clears perfectly. Second, equilibrium quantity, the amount bought and sold at equilibrium price. Both buyers and sellers are satisfied with this outcome. And third, where buyers and sellers agree, equilibrium represents coordination without a coordinator. No one plans it, yet markets find it automatically through price adjustments.
Let's assume you live in a small town where nobody sells bananas. In other words, zero supply. Now, let's also assume that the people who live there would love to eat bananas. In other words, there's a decent demand for bananas. As we can see, there is currently an imbalance. People want bananas, but there are no sellers. Peter understands this and starts selling bananas. At the beginning, his profits will be huge because lots of people want bananas and he's the only one who has them. As time passes, however, Sarah will notice how well Peter is doing and start selling bananas herself. This increases the supply of bananas and diminishes Peter's profit potential. The more people start selling bananas, the more supply there will be. If too many people end up selling bananas, but the demand doesn't increase as well, there will be too much supply and some of them will go out of business. Eventually, some kind of a balance tends to be reached.
Let's collect the summary points. Markets work because buyers and sellers respond to the price. Demand reflects customers' want and ability to pay. Supply reflects producers' cost and willingness to sell. Equilibrium where both sides agree. Price and quantity balance naturally. And quota to end with. Without supply and demand, markets are just noise. Thank you for your attention.